Welcome to the We Over Me podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Miller, joined by teammate CEO DeMoine Adams and Director of Engagement, Allyson Horne. In this podcast, we'll focus on teammates' strengths-based approach to mentoring a team of leaders. So welcome, guys.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. So for those of you at home, if you're watching and you're not, on Spotify or anything like that, we are all up very bright and early in our own respective hotel rooms at the National Mentoring Summit in DC. So it's been an amazing experience, at least for me. This was my first time attending the conference. But I wanted to get your takeaways from the event. I'll end up. So I'll have Allyson tell us a little bit about your takeaways of the National Mentoring Summit.
I think this is, I believe, 5 or 6 times for me to attend. And each time that I'm here, I really walk away with such an appreciation for the great work that is being done on the national level, a lot of different organizations. And then deep gratitude for the 30 plus years that we've been doing this, so that when we're here, we can network and share a little bit of our own best practices and really leaving with an appreciation of the work that we've done and that we're able to share when we're here. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to chat with a couple coordinators who are really trying to implement their program from the start. And I think they were feeling a bit of overwhelm and worry, and being here is a reminder for them, and it was a reminder for me that we're part of a much larger network, and such a great opportunity to share best practices and share some of those hiccups along the way and the things that we've learned.
And it's so great to have somebody like you here, Allyson, who's been in teammates forever, feels like probably. So you are able to embark that wisdom on others and be able to help them through a lot of those struggles. So it's been really fun to watch that in action. So DeMoine, what about you? What's your takeaway?
I'll have to echo a lot of what Allyson said. It's really affirming to know, as an organization that's been around for 31 years, that, we're doing, everything that's consistent with the national umbrella, mentor, to be around others and just to also learn and network, share ideals, and just continue to do everything around best practices. They provide such an incredible model, and to remain unique, to be school-based, to be one-to-one, and to be one of the biggest school-based mentoring programs in the nation. It's incredible. It's humbling, but it's always a great experience. This is my 5th one. Looking forward to hopefully present next year with the both of you, but maybe we'll all have to do our own breakout session.
I know. I think we were talking last night how we're going to have a teammates takeover at the National Summit next year. I think for me, it's very similar. Humbling was also my word as well, just to describe this whole experience. Sometimes we talk about imposter syndrome, or, we talk about like, am I doing enough? Like, am I actually like doing the work that needs to be done? And you feel like you're just going and going and going, but is it making a huge difference? And I think in this capacity, I learned, yeah, like we have it together. We're doing a great job. Other programs are also doing a great job, but it's fun to see how their programs are so much different than ours, and just the capacity at which we run. It's been really humbling and really cool. So today we are talking about CliftonStrengths at work. And one of the things I love most about this topic is that we have so many awesome strengths coaches, but Allyson, you truly are the OG of strengths at teammates. So I want to talk a little bit about how it started, but also why is it impactful? So first, before we get into that, I want to hear everyone's top 5. Mine is positivity, woo, activator, restorative, and empathy. Allyson, what about you?
I lead with input, communication, strategic, woo, and empathy.
Love it. DeMoine?
And I lead with futuristic, significance, individualization, relator, and strategic.
Which we see all the time in DeMoine. But Allyson is our OG strengths coach. How did we even, get to this point? And when did we start doing strengths at Teammates?
It's funny that you say OG because when I hear that, I think OLD. But I also, the first time I heard OG, I had to look it up. I didn't know what it meant. So that tells you a lot about my generational perspective. Back in 2009, we were very fortunate to partner with Gallup. And I've shared this story many times, but my appreciation for essentially our roots with the Gallup partnership really means a lot to me. We were lucky enough to build upon the friendship and partnership that Coach Osborne and Don Clifton had formed many years ago, and that influenced us to be able to further partner. We've always been, I think, organizationally, if you think about our core values, those have been rooted in a strength-based philosophy. It's about what is right with one another. It's about what's right with students. It's about potential. And using an instrument like Gallup-Strengths has helped us to really put that into practice. So whether or not you know your Gallup top 5, we all have opportunities every single day to be a strength spotter in someone else, whether that's the person across the breakfast table from you, across the conference room table, across the grocery store checkout aisle. If we're looking for and noticing the good and naming that and really helping with intentionality lift others up. So that partnership began in 2009, and I happened to be the lucky person on staff that got to go back to school and get my certificate in strength-based education. It was some of the best learning of my life. It was truly life-changing, especially in the way that I was able to understand complementary partners, people around me who had different strengths, and we all do, and really helped me as a parent to better understand my 2 kiddos at home who I was interacting with most, and understanding that they had very different strengths than I did. So fast forward to today, we are truly implementing and walking our talk. Being strength-based has now been an additional core value, and something that I'm very proud of as an organization, that we are practicing from the national office to our program coordinators and our mentors and mentees and all of our constituents. We are truly practicing that model.
We are 100%. And I think it's so funny when you bring somebody in who hasn't worked for Teammates for a while, or for instance, my husband, you bring him to the Christmas party and we speak a whole other language that most people don't understand. Like, we will just be having a normal conversation, and Trisha from our office will say, Hannah, that's your positivity showing. And my husband, who, he knows his top 5, or his 34, actually, he knows now, but he's like, how do you do that? But, and so it's really cool to see in the workplace how that's evolved and how that's changed. And I think a lot of that also stems from your leadership, DeMoine. Tell us about, how you've been able to implement strengths at work.
Just coming in, post-COVID, lots of change, and not a lot of people like change, but also sometimes change takes away this sense of hope. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on was providing staff with hope, but also finding ways to engage our staff, getting them really feeling appreciated, like they belong, like they value. And what better way to do that than with strengths? And so that was my number one priority. I wanted to focus on building a team around a culture that focus on each other's strengths, because we all know that strengths lead to hope, engagement, and well-being. And so I wanted to make sure that that was the foundation. Wanted to make sure that my own self-awareness of strengths, but also led to just the awareness of others, how they were feeling, asking lots of questions, learning how to turn down some of my strengths and turn up some of my strengths, to really tailor the way that I was listening to the staff, but most importantly, getting everyone excited about Teammates. And that's the significance that I bring every single day, getting them excited about what's next. Futuristic sometimes scares a lot of people. So it's nice to have, as Allyson mentioned, those partners who complement you. And Allyson has done a great job of really just complimenting me with some of my lesser strengths, and really appreciate everything that she is doing as our director of engagement.
And I would say too, it also comes from the top down. Gallup's book, It's the Manager, and also Wellbeing at Work. All of those awesome books say a lot of that culture comes from the manager. And Allyson, both of you, Allyson and DeMoine, have done a really good job of teaching us managers. Allyson, what's something that you would say is important for managers to know, or something that you have learned in working with us as we lead our teams?
I think the most important piece of authentic leadership is truly being authentic. So walking in your own strengths and being in the practice of understanding the unique lens that you bring. My friend Kristen often gives the analogy that if we talk about we're going to have tacos for dinner, there is the 1 in 33 million different approach to that when it comes to our strengths. So we all know conceptually what that means, right? We can envision what tacos on the dinner table look like, but if you think about the food prep and the grocery shopping and everything that we do as far as the approach to that task, knowing that about ourselves first, and DeMoine mentioned this, that self-awareness and that authenticity that we bring as leaders is critical. And then having the recognition of, okay, 1 in 33 million uniqueness means that Hannah is going to go to the grocery store very differently than I do. And it, for me, was so helpful, again, learning this language with my own children, who were, my most significant roommates of my life, that they were in my space. And I was realizing that they weren't waking up in the morning thinking of ways to irritate their mom. They actually were showing up as their most authentic self. And if I wasn't helping them to aim that talent, I was actually sometimes getting in their way. And so I think it's really important for our team leaders, and I see this program wide, and I see this in our students too. They do this really, really well. When you show up authentically, you're more likely to encourage someone else to do the same thing. And I think that's a critical component of using strength-based language.
And that authenticity, excuse me, it's so incredibly important. My team, we lead in influencing and strategic thinking. Now, I am definitely, strategic thinking is in my lesser strengths. I am more of a relationship building, influencing person. But when you look at my team, we just complement each other so well. But I'm sure it could be very easy. David and I both lead with activator, which means we are a catalyst and we're excited to get started for things. But Elena, who is our intern, she has a lot of executing strengths, but also a lot of relationship building. So it may be a little bit harder for her to go ahead and get started on a project. So she may see us running and getting excited and say, whoa there, can we settle down a minute? But we're able to use that language and maybe even share and be vulnerable with one another and what strength is being neglected, so we can help each other through those kinds of situations as well. DeMoine, how do you see leadership through a strengths-based lens within teammates?
Well, for one, they always say once you stop learning, you stop leading. So I always take the approach of continuing to improve myself, lead. Maybe that's the achiever, maybe that's the learner. Learner is pretty high for me. I also believe that leadership is about relationships. And so making sure that we have this culture of this we over me attitude really provides this broader perspective of the work that we need to do, the constituents that we need to serve, from the students, the mentors, board members. We do a lot of great work as servant leaders, and it's extremely important that we are in this together. And so leadership is about relationships, and it starts with our staff. And what we've been able to do over the last year and a half with all of our other programs, for them to also know their strengths, and really appreciate the time that they take to just believe in what we're doing. We are very mission based. We're very relationship based. We are very strength based, and we walk the talk. And we do surveys all of the time, and for our staff to be 89% engaged, that's something to be proud of. I really appreciate staff like the both of you to help me to smell the roses, because sometimes my achiever, which is my number 6, wants to just keep moving, but it's nice to take a pause and to know that we're doing things good. And strengths is really the foundation of everything that we do. And just thinking how we can encourage our mentors to have those conversations with their mentees, to focus on what's right about them, not what's wrong with them, to focus on what they can do, not what they can't do. That ties into our mission of impacting the world by inspiring you to reach their full potential through mentoring. That's what it's all about.
I love every time you speak, I can just take like little tidbits and like put into a PSA. Like it's all just like so beautiful the way and eloquent the way you say it. Allyson, DeMoine talked about our 89% engagement rate. Would you mind telling folks who have no idea what that means, what that's around?
We're very proud of that statistic. I would go even further to say that, in addition to having that high level of engagement, we had a very quick response to the survey, which is also a really strong indicator of engagement. One of the tasks in front of me is to help define what engagement means. And just like 1 in 33 million approach to making tacos for dinner, I think we have a 1 in 33 million approach to what engagement looks like. But Gallup uses an instrument called Q12, measures engagement at work. It's been in place for a number of years, and they've got some pretty remarkable statistics when you think about the engagement of the workplace in the United States. And what they've been able to show consistently is 1/3 of Americans are engaged. And as our CFO, John, likes to remind me, I am not good at math, but what I do know is that 2/3, this is what Gallup tells me, 2/3 of Americans are not engaged, actually. So 1/3 are engaged, 2/3 are disengaged or actively disengaged. And when you think about engagement, if we imagine there's a piece of trash on the floor in the workspace, an engaged employee sees a piece of trash on the floor and they pick it up and they throw it in the trash can. A disengaged employee looks at the piece of trash on the floor and says, "Not my problem," and walks away from it. And the actively disengaged employee is the one who put the trash on the floor in the first place. And that analogy has helped me to really think about, again, not necessarily even anything bringing to the table personal. It's just more around how we approach performance. And it's critical for us to think about that. I love the analogy that I use regarding engagement. It's when people show up, not because they have to, but because they want to. And we have such phenomenal examples of that within our organization. All of us here wear 1,000 different hats at any given moment. All of us on our national office team wear 1,000 different hats at any given moment. And so do our program coordinators and many of our mentors and students too. But when you think about that level of engagement, it's in how we show up. And my hope is that we can continue to build on that, but we're very proud of that 89%. When you think about comparatively to the national statistics, but also it helps us to think about how we're doing what we do best. So Des Moines has done a phenomenal job, and I know Hannah and I both can speak to this, of really helping people be in places where their talent shines. And they're able to have a positive contribution and aim their strengths with intentionality. Really being able to feel in their purpose and in their why. And so I think when we look at those numbers, there are a number of factors, but the fact that we are talking about our strengths and doing it in really simple ways. Hannah, I appreciated earlier that you asked how we go about doing it. You can use this language when you check in with a team member. And I use the term team very holistically. We're part of many teams. Des Moines knows that I'm not good at football analogies, but I do understand what the concept of a team is. But I use the term team holistically. My family is part of my team. My teammates' workspace is part of my team. I have a group of friends that we call ourselves the Golden Girls. That's one of the teams that I'm part of as well. So our Golden Girls team is a team. The way that we all show up to that, we can ask simple questions to engage someone. I've done it with my kids for years with the best part of your day and the silliest part of your day. You can use strengths language and strength-based questions without even having your Gallup assessment or necessarily your top 5 in front of you, or knowing someone else's top 5. I'm about to fly back to Denver, and I can promise you that I'm going to ask some strength-based questions to the lucky person who sits next to me on the plane, because I have high communication and high woo. But I do love the way that we can do that in such a simple format. It doesn't require a whole lot of extra time or energy or even knowledge to say, tell me about something that you're proud of, or what's a superpower that you use every day. And we are really building upon that. And I think that helps us when we think about our overarching levels of engagement.
I love when we call it a superpower, because it really is. And actually, that leads great into our activity today, Allyson. Thank you for that. We're going to do just a very quick activity where we talk about the strength that we have seen this week. So, DeMoine, I'm going to start with you. As you think about this week that we spent in DC and all that we've learned, but also all that we've done, what strength do you see that you've used in this week?
Oh, it's been a great opportunity to network, get to know others. I would definitely say learner. It's a great time to listen, learn, continue to improve. Also, relator is high for me. So being able to relate to all organizations, whether they're CEOs or they're program coordinators, but then also leaning into my top 10. Other strengths such as focus. One of my lesser strengths is woo and communication, but I'm able to turn those strengths up, with my achiever, with my focus, with my strategic. And I just felt there was a lot of woo energy these last couple of days, and it was really exciting just to be around other mentoring organizations doing the same work as nonprofits, all trying to make a difference, a positive impact in the community through students. So that's how I felt I shined this week, but definitely saw a lot of woo, a lot of communication, and had to really be strategic to turn up some of my lesser strengths so that they can be super.
And I think that's a really important point. A lot of people say, oh, well, I don't have woo, or I don't have this. No, you do. We all have those 34 talents within us, but it takes a lot more energy to actually use them. And DeMoine, I love that you talked about that, because one of my things I've learned from you as my leader and my mentor is that, so one of the things I want to start doing is really start doing a lot more strategic thinking. But strategic is in my bottom 34. So for me, it is going to take me a lot more energy, but you said, okay, well, what do we need to do, or what do we need to get off your plate so you can have more time for strategic thinking? And that to me is strengths-based leadership, making sure we are offering our staff or whoever you're working with, whether it even be your mentee, just those skills and just that allowance in yourself to have that. So anyway, part of our activity isn't just to share that, but it's also one of my favorite guides. If you are a leader in your organization or just want to learn more about strengths, one of my favorite tools is the Strengths-Based Leadership Resource Guide that you can get from Gallup. And so the first one you talked about was learner. I pulled it up for those of you who don't speak our language. Learner is under the strategic thinking thing. People exceptionally talented in the learner theme have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve. The process of learning rather than the outcome excites them. Now, what I love about this report is on the side, it tells you what somebody with high learner brings, and then also what somebody with high learner needs. So DeMoine, with his high learner, he brings a learning perspective and excitement for the learning process, which I definitely have seen in you this week. And something that DeMoine may need, either from another leader or maybe a staff member or somebody to collaborate with, is exposure to new information and experiences. So for DeMoine, I don't want to speak for you, I'm sure conferences are like the best thing in the world for you.
Yes, it's been incredible just to learn from others, learn more information, find better ways to be a better leader, to be a better coach. We don't like to say the word boss, with teammates. We like to use the word coach, and just for us to be coaches, to develop others, to develop one another. And that's what it's all about.
I love hearing that. Thank you, DeMoine, for sharing. Allyson, what about you? What was your strength that you saw this week?
I cannot resist the opportunity to strength spot DeMoine and that learner. And I love, Hannah, that you use the SBL so well. I mean, again, this is a tool that's right there at the ready that anyone can use that helps you to better understand the amazing humans that you spend time with. I watched DeMoine take notes in a session that we were in together. And my notes, I guarantee you, my notes look very, very different than DeMoine's notes, but he's taking notes, and I can see actually the learner happening. Like, that's a great thing about being part of a team and working together with people for a number of years. I feel like I know both of you well, and I can see what's happening before it even like comes to fruition. And I know some of the notes that he's taking are going to turn into conversations that he may have with me, or he may have with Vicky, or he may have with Terry or Hannah or the board. I'm kind of watching how that happens, and it looks like communication to me. So communication may be lower for DeMoine, but that learner relator and the notes, the very specific notes that he's taking, looks like communication in action. My notes are when I hear a catchphrase or I feel like something may land. So the strength that I feel like I bring and I definitely utilize most this conference was my communication. And it was in listening to the way other people present. As a speaker and a presenter, you're always watching for great presenters and trying to learn and glean from them. And I think my communication definitely was honored in witnessing some great communicators, some great storytelling. That's such a critical part of my role, but also I think a superpower that I bring. But watching how those were done really well. We had a speaker yesterday in the opening session who literally had us at the edge of our seats, and there was complete silence. And the way that that was set up for his story to be told could have been done very differently. The introduction to this particular speaker, Jared, the gentleman who introduced him said, "I'm not going to say much. I'm going to let him tell his own story." And at first I went into assumption mode about that. Like, oh, they don't really know the presenter, or, oh, they're not really sure how this is going to go. And it was so critical that Jared's story was told by Jared. And so I think my communication was really honored in witnessing that happening and thinking about my strategic inaction, how we might be able to implement something like that, how we are able to help other people tell their stories in a meaningful way.
Oh, and I definitely saw it. I love that you pointed out that's how you take notes, because I was sitting next to you during that. And the second he said this beautiful quote, the second he did, you like grabbed your notebook. Like, I got to write this down. And there were a couple other great ones too that we heard throughout some different sessions that I was like, I'm going to have to ask Allyson for the exact verbiage on that, because I know she wrote that down. But for folks who want to know more about communication, it is in the influencing domain. I thought of the word as you were talking. People exceptionally talented in the communication theme generally find it easy to put their thoughts into words. They are good conversationalists and presenters, which we all know Miss Allyson Horne is a fantastic, not only conversationalist, but like an amazing presenter. What Allyson brings is attention to messages that must be heard. And I think you literally just did that in that sentence. Was you were just telling about those things that need to be heard, those beautiful tidbits that you write. That's storytelling at its finest. And then what you need is a sounding board or an audience. The worst thing to do with communication, and Allyson, please correct me if I'm wrong, the worst thing to do with somebody with communication is just to put them by themselves in a room.
Well, I spent a lot of time in the principal's office growing up, and Mr. Evans would beautifully tell me when I was in that quiet space of turning down my communication, he would say, "One day, Allyson Horne, you're going to use that verbal exuberance for something good." And I've thought about that many times over the years, how lucky I was to spend time in a principal's office who reminded me that it wasn't the worst of me. It was actually the best of me. And so unfortunately, for a lot of people who spend time with me, I am very verbally exuberant, but I do need that sounding board, and I need it to be a safe space. There are times when I actually don't know what I'm going to say, and like word bubbles happen outside of my head. I process out loud, and I need that safe space to be able to share that and feel like I can have it held and trusted, because sometimes those word bubbles are not exactly what I want to say, and I want to take them back and refine them a little bit. So well stated, Hannah, on the best of me, and really what I need and what I bring. Thank you.
Verbal exuberance is now my absolute favorite thing in the world. I love hearing that. So the strength I've used woo a lot this week. It's been at like the highest peak, but I'm going to say that developer was probably the one that I felt like I really used. And for those of you who don't know my team, David Baker is my teammate. He got to present at conference, and I always think back to the mom from Mean Girls, where she's like, the girls are up on stage and she's got the camera and she's dancing, and that was me at David's presentation on the research that he's been doing with Mentor. I was just beaming with pride. Developer is my number 6. So that one I see quite a bit lately. So for those folks who don't know a whole lot about developer, it is in the relationship building domain. People exceptionally talented in developer recognize and cultivate the potential in others. They spot the signs of each small improvement and derive satisfaction from evidence and progress. So something I bring to the table is a commitment, time, and energy to human growth. But what I need is someone to invest in. And I don't think I've ever been able to let this strength shine until I became a manager. And then I was able to really thrive having that. And of course it helps that David is just amazing and Elena is too. And so I have a great team that I get to like invest in. But something also that I was able to use is in one of our sessions that I attended, it was about recruiting across generations. And I was at the table that was assigned to come up with a recruitment strategy for Gen Z, which happens to be the generation my team is on, minus me. And one of the things that they were saying Gen Z needs, or something that Gen Z, what motivates them, is rewards and free stuff, which I was like, that's weird. Like, that just doesn't sound like my team at all. But then I thought more about it in the way of recognition. They want individualized recognition that is timely, specific, and like I said, individualized. So for them, they want those little just tidbits, even if it's just a text message where I text Elena saying, hey, I saw you had a recording today. How'd it go? And then I'll say, oh, so proud of you, like mom moment. Or like for David, for me, even just to show up and like support him at his presentation, I could tell meant a lot to him. And that's how he felt seen. So it's really fun for me to like dive into how other people like to be recognized and how I can help develop that through them. So that's been kind of a fun way I've used my developer strength.
Oh, and Hannah, I so witnessed that. I think I noticed it. It's not, for me, it's not just your development of humans, it's in your development of all the things. So even in our conversation, during right before David's presentation, we were seated at a table where Hannah was able to share about what we do, and I could see the natural development of relationships that you were doing. I mean, you were just bridging the awareness of who Teammates is with these other lucky humans who happened to be at the table with us. But I could see how your brain was building potential for potential partnerships. And so I love witnessing developer in you, because I think it's not limited to, I mean, which we're all lucky that it's, mostly based in human growth, but it's not limited to people. It's limited. It's abundant in situations and partnerships and opportunities, even like what we're doing right now, having a conversation and doing a podcast. That's something that you and Elena have developed with intentionality. And I think it's such a great use of your talent.
Oh, well, thank you, Allyson. So we are at the end of our time. We actually have 10 minutes for our first session today. So I'm going to go ahead and end us here. So thank you for joining us. Be sure to check out the video version of this podcast on Teammates Online Magazine, the Do Good News at dogoodnews.teammates.org, and check out our social media for our mini episodes where we take a closer look into how CliftonStrengths play a role in the mentoring relationship and as a core value. And for those of you, spoiler alert, Allyson is on both of those episodes. So if you want to hear more about strengths and of course her beautiful perspective, please check those out. From all of us here at Teammates, thanks for being there.